All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to the July edition of the InterReach webinar series. My name is Kristine Glauber. I serve as the chair for our webinar series. Just a couple of reminders, we are recording today's session and it will be available on our website. That's interreach.org under the Webinar Archives tab. And I also just want to offer a reminder to please mute yourself when you're not speaking to avoid any distractions and feedback. I'm gonna admit a couple more people here. And then I just want to say that I am very excited about today's webinar. We've got a pretty packed schedule, so I'm going to get right into the introductions. And I'd like to start by introducing Dr. Savina Hoffman, but also just to say that this was a highly collaborative effort among the entire group today. So Dr. Hoffman is the group leader for the transdisciplinary research at Eawag, at the Swiss Federal Institute of Aquatic Science and Technology in Switzerland. Our other speakers include Dr. Kristine Ogilvie Hendren, who is an assistant professor, assistant research professor at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Duke University. She is actually going to be moving on very soon to a new role. I'll let her tell about that. Myself, Kristine Glauber, I'm the program director of the Team Science Core at the Clinical and Translational Science Institute at Duke University. Dr. Julie Thompson-Klein is the professor of humanities emerita at Wayne State University and an international research affiliate at the Transdisciplinary lab at ETH Zurich, Switzerland. Tobias Busser is the head of ITD Alliance and the Network for Transdisciplinary Research, TDNet, in Switzerland, and Dr. Gabriele Bammer, who isn't able to be with us in person today, but was able to send in a recording. So we'll be hearing directly from her. She is a professor at the National Center for Epidemiology and Population Health in the Research School of Population Health. That doesn't seem right. Did I get that wrong in my notes somewhere?
I think that's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry,
I'm so
like missing
just
something.
Her origin.
But she's at, yeah, Australian National University. Okay, so with that, did I hear someone? Okay, sorry. With that, I want to turn it over to Dr. Sabine Hoffman.
Super, so thanks for this nice introduction. So my name is Sabine, and I would like to briefly present the new profession, what we call the new profession of integration experts, based on my own work at Eawag, the Swiss Federal Institute of Aquatic Science. So as Kristine already said, I'm a group leader of transdisciplinary research at Eawag, and I'm also head of a strategic research program, which is called WINGS. This is an inter- and transdisciplinary program that focuses on innovative urban water systems. And the program involves 4 departments and a range of different disciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary research projects funded by different funding agencies. As I'm a group leader, or the leader of this program, I'm responsible for strengthening communication and collaboration across different Eawag departments, particularly among researchers from social science and engineers. And I'm also leading integration within the program and the course of the program. I'm also responsible for generating scientific synthesis based on the results of the different projects that are involved, and also responsible for triggering regular reflection on inter- and transdisciplinarity within the program. So I conceive myself in this role as an integration leader on my way to become an integration expert. But also I'm at the same time a scholar on inter- and transdisciplinary integration. However, I also act as a change agent because I had really an active role in shaping my own position at Eawag, a position which allows me to combine leading integration and researching on integration at the same time. I also played a major role in establishing 2 communities of practice at Eawag, that are people who work at the interface between research policy and practice and who share a common interest in exchanging about their challenges, but also the opportunities their work involve in at that interface. Maybe we can, there is some kitchen noise behind. Maybe we can, you can just unmute all. Okay. So I would conceive myself as an integration leader, a scholar, and a change agent, but at the same time, I'm also facilitating integration. I'm facilitating interaction, formal and informal interactions between research policy and practice. So I'm a facilitator, and I'm also collaborating in different inter and transdisciplinary projects. And I'm sure there are a lot of other roles that I'm not even aware of, and other roles that will come in the future that I will assume. So I think I would conceive myself as an integration expert that involves a hybridity of different roles at different times and in different contexts. I think this is something special about these integration expert roles. But the last thing I would like to highlight is that integration for me, and I think we are all aware of this, is more than just facilitation. For me, it's a really challenging, demanding, but also rewarding task that has at least three dimensions. A cognitive dimension, which involves establishing the intrinsic purpose of integration, but also weighing different contributions, including my own intellectual contribution. And also bringing these, linking and combining these different contributions, and also remaining critical about the emerging integrated result of this integration. But it also has, for me, a social component or a social dimension. That means it includes facilitating, as I said before, formal and informal interactions between research policy and practice, but also balancing the various and really often competing demands, expectation, and interests of all actors involved. And last but not least, for me, it also has an emotional dimension, and it implies the often, I find, underestimated challenge of appreciating and honoring the different contributions from different actors, but also navigating the various tensions that are involved in inter and transdisciplinary integration. So this is just a brief snapshot about what integration expert and expertise means for me personally. And now with the aim of this webinar is to explain or to present some global efforts that aim at developing the new profession of integration experts or interdisciplinary executive scientists or integration and implementation scientists. There are different labels within different scientific communities, though the idea is to briefly introduce these different efforts, and then also to briefly talk about the position and related skills. And then the idea is also to present the global international inter and transdisciplinary alliance, then to make the switch to talk about the ambition of creating, under the auspice of this ITD alliance, a new working group on integration, expert and expertise to join forces in this, in our ambition to promote and establish this new profession of integration expertise. And then we will open the floor and discuss hopefully your ideas on this new ITD Alliance working group. And then I will briefly discuss some or present some steps that we could go together to create this new working group. So now I hand over to Kristine to talk briefly about the Interreach.
Hi. This is Kristine Hendren. I am not personally seeing the slides. Is everyone else seeing the slides?
I am.
Yes, I can see them.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I can see them at the top. All right. That will help me speak to them. So thank you. That was a really great introduction, Savina. Thank you so much. I'm not going to go over this for too long because many of the people on this call or anybody that wants to look in the Interreach archives can look at this. But because we are looking together at what we can do, we thought we would just show how this ties in perfectly with the origin story and the intention of this community of practice. So the Science of Team Science meeting in 2014, I think, in Austin was a place that I was invited by an anthropologist friend to just talk about my job, talk about what was hard and what I was doing. And it was all the things that Savina was just mentioning, pieces of those. And I started to just see that it was seen, to kind of her point, as a facilitative or administrative role, very support oriented, which is definitely part of it, but it was also, I couldn't help but realize that it was invisible to some people how much that role was necessary to transfer, transform, translate ideas, all these things. So, okay, any big project we're in has all these different disciplines in them. This is a random generic diagram of the types of disciplines that might be included. And all the boxes have names of disciplines in them. And you can be sure that if you're putting in a proposal, all those boxes for the product engineer and the material scientist and the historian, you would have a name by those. But if you go to the next slide, what you notice is missing is everything without a name, which is the arrows, the magic, just transfer of information between all these pieces. And what we realized was that that doesn't happen magically, that we have to put a name on that arrow, the skills, and the name, including the people. So if you go to the next slide, this was our little very simple eureka, which, okay, we need somebody to be the arrow. Out of that first meeting, we just started gathering other people that also thought this, that were saying, hey, that's me, that's my job. I do this, but I don't have a colleague at my organization, but I feel everything you're saying. So what we decided out of some early folks in the Science of Team Science community is, let's form a community of practice, just an interest group at first, to understand our roles, compare languages and experiences, share strategies, and draw on this rich body of literature and evidence basis that's emerging from a number of places. So the Be the Arrow is our tagline for InterReach. But we have a dual mission of developing the profession and professional development. So developing the profession, making the case, creating structures and pathways to institutionalize these roles, to raise the visibility for this sometimes invisible labor, and create career paths so that you could grow up the same way that you would grow up and say, I'm going to be a microbiologist. Okay, I'm going to connect across boundaries. I'm going to span boundaries. I'm going to be one of these things, because it is a certain skill set. And then professional development is, how do we help trade skills and train each other and share all this wisdom and co-generate it together. So the next slide is just, you might notice that InterReach is yet another name. It stands for Interdisciplinary Integration Research Careers Hub. So what that was designed to do is not be any of the other names that already existed, because what we're not trying to plant a flag on the moon with this particular community. We're trying to welcome everybody in who can benefit from this group of colleagues in a community of practice. So overlaps and distinctions between these different jobs that do the boundary spanning we're talking about are both helpful in defining our community needs. I'm just going to talk about the separate roles that are included, and you'll see later Julie Thompson-Klein will talk about more of the shared space here and how that shapes what we do. But the four roles that you see on these outside sort of Venn diagram diamond places are not exhaustive of all the types of roles. So for example, integration leader and integration expert, as Sabina mentioned, they're not listed here, but that doesn't mean that they don't belong here. When we sort of incorporated as a group, things that existed already were research development professionals. So there's NORDA as a national organization for research development professionals. That is often people who are trying to help get awards, put together teams, assemble a successful competition for award, but they don't necessarily only see themselves as pre-award help. There's also IES, Interdisciplinary Executive Scientist, along with Sharon Koo and with the help of Amanda Vogel and Kara Hall, I came up with this term, basically just talking about my own role and other people who saw themselves in this. So that place is usually an alt academic place, research organizational management, support of large infrastructures, more likely to be a staff position, but often filling faculty roles. Then I2S is Gabriele Bammer has coined this integration and implementation science specialist. And that's a straight tenure track job in a discipline about integrating across boundaries for solving wicked complex problems. And then the fourth one was community engagement manager. And we brought this in because Dr. Lou Woodley has a AAAS fellowship where you can study all the skills, participate in learning the, how to do this type of work, and that can span many different roles as well. So you can be active in many sectors and you're kind of organizing a group of people toward a common goal. So those are examples. If you don't identify as one of those 3-letter acronyms, that does not matter. The part in the middle that Julie covers is the reason we're here together, but the distinctions are also helpful in kind of finding what are the different things that would serve us in both making the case, developing the profession, and deciding what would be the most useful training and best practices and resources as we do professional development together. And that's all I've got. Thank you so much for joining. We're glad to see so many people on today.
All right, so this is Kristine Glauber again. I just wanted to quickly say, or rather not quickly, but thank you to Sabina for sharing so far your role as an integration leader, and to Kristine for sharing the historical background of InterReach and kind of why we're all here. I want to share a little bit more about the webinar series very briefly. If you go to interreach.org, this is what our homepage looks like. And if you click on events, that's where you're going to be able to find all of the upcoming webinars that are scheduled. We've got a couple that are in the works, and we're really excited about those coming up. So so be on the lookout for those. There's also a listserv. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's information about how to subscribe to our listserv so you can be up to date with all of our upcoming webinars. And also, if you go to this up at the top, this webinar series archives, that is where we archive all of these recordings. So once we complete the recording of today's webinar, this will be up there as well. And you can see all kinds of really great webinars that we recorded since April of 2017. And some of the stuff that has been already touched on is up there. So Dr. Gabriele Bammer makes a case for integration and implementation sciences, so that I2S role. Dr. Holly Falk-Krasinski sharing some evidence basis for leadership and communication across team science. Kristine mentioned Dr. Lou Woodley, who has a AAAS community engagement program. She speaks about her program back in July of 2017. Webinars on motivating investment in institutional infrastructure for these roles. So there's just a wealth of information here, and we're constantly making more. And just to kind of give a quick preview, we're in the process of developing out an entire series on tools that that folks in this role, whether you call yourself an IES or an integration leader, whatever you call yourself, that you can use for this actual work. So, and with that, I want to turn it on over to Julie.
Do we have Gabriele first?
Is Gabriele going next?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries, as she would say in Australia.
We don't have sound.
Yeah. Maybe we could refer to her content then.
Sabina, I think if you unmute and also pull your headphones out, then that would work. You'll have to unmute yourself. Mhm.
Okay, sorry for
No,
this.
no worries.
We start again, okay?
Okay.
Hi, I'm Gabriele, and I want to give you a brief 3-slide introduction to Integration and Implementation Sciences, known as I2S for short. The development of I2S arose from my experience running a major program of research in the 1990s, which had disciplinary, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary elements. And in the work that I've done since then, it's developed into an argument for a new discipline, I2S, which underpins and provides the ability to share concepts and methods across many fields of endeavour, not only inter and transdisciplinarity, but also action research, systems thinking, integrated assessment, post-normal science and more. The basic elements of integration and implementation sciences are twofold. On one side of this slide, you can see 3 domains: synthesising knowledge, managing unknowns, and bringing together what we know and don't know to support improvement. There are 5 basic questions. What are the aims and who do we aim to benefit? What's involved? What's the systems thinking we need? What's the value assessment that we need? How do we work together? How do we do it? How do we integrate knowledge? How do we manage unknowns? How do we support improvement? The 4th question is about context. What are the circumstances that might affect what we're doing? And the 5th question is an evaluative question. How do we know that we've made good choices? On the other side of the slide, you can see a list of topics, which are the key main topics that integration and implementation sciences covers: change, communication, context, etc., right down to systems and unknowns. Finally, I want to say that we're not a membership organisation, but we do aim to build community, and we do this in several ways. First, we have a website that we use both to describe I2S, but also to provide a number of resources that we put together, and we advertise these bi-monthly through the I2S News, which has about 500 subscribers. Second, we run a blog, the I2 Insights blog. Weekly, we publish a new blog post. These are written by community members, so we have about 1,200 people who follow the blog. We have nearly 400 people who have produced blog posts, and we have a range of other people who comment on blog posts. So there are all ways of getting involved. We also run a LinkedIn group, the Global Network for Research Implementation, Research Integration and Implementation, which has about 500 people involved. We have a YouTube channel, which is where the InterReach topics, or InterReach webinars, as well as other videos are stored. And finally, we have quite a large Twitter community, and you can follow what we're doing in I2S through @Gabriele or hashtag I2S resources. Thanks. Hi.
Okay.
Great.
Now.
Yeah, thanks very much. Julie here. Hello, everybody. We're really glad to see everybody today. So thank you, Kristine, for mentioning my titles, which I'll spare everybody repeating. I just add that my interest in this, I got here because my field of scholarship is inter and transdisciplinarity, and that has also led me inevitably into team science. I am on the Insights Board of Directors, so deeply involved in team science. And my particular stake in having a position is that when I was at Wayne State University, where I no longer am, I was faculty fellow for interdisciplinary development in the Division of Research at a time that team science was much on their agenda. So going to the first slide here, I've got 4 slides and I'll rip through them to try to keep our timetable, but I'm glad to talk with anybody about more details later. Now, as Kristine said, we're repeating her excellent slide, which gives an overview. She has spoken about the specific positions. I think it gives us a great framework also for talking about the kinds of jobs and responsibilities people have, as well as the related skills. So if you could zero your eyes in there, zoom in to the shared portion in the middle. The key word here is shared. That is, all of these positions have in common certain knowledges and skills, and I was very glad that Kristine added disposition and wisdom. If we could go to the next slide, please. we'll see though that the typical titles, as Kristine was also mentioned, there are many different roles, and if you're not an I2S or an RDP or an IES or a CEM, you're still part of this mix. And what's interesting about the typical titles is some are at a high level of a particular campus. For example, an associate or assistant director who's highly placed in a research office, as well as we've got some people who are assistant, associate, provost, president, and chancellor. But there are also positions, if you go to the third bullet point under typical titles, that are lower in the academic hierarchy, but nonetheless crucial to talking about advancing our common interests. For example, an administrator or a manager or coordinator, they have in common an organizational function, but there's also a very clear knowledge function. And we see that with the titles of specialist, analyst, and scientist. If we look down at focus areas, Kristine has already referred to the overriding importance of the economic role with grants and contracts, but we also see that development, professional development and management are part of the mix. So people involved in organizing programs and initiatives, as well as outreach. So it's partnerships into communities and alliances with agencies, including, of course, federal agencies and funding agencies, and then teamwork. If we go to slide number 3, I would really urge everybody to look more deeply into Kristine's excellent webinar on the IES position in particular, because there she gives us a very handy gloss of the range of skills. And as your eye is running over them, you see that the first category is epistemic. So it has an intellectual knowledge function. And we see that in the notion that somebody in this kind of a position has a specialty as particularly a scientist, often, but it's much more than that. Somebody also, in addition to having an academic specialty, is a bridger or a broker. Kristine had mentioned translation. So someone is translating across those domains, but also at the same time responsible for helping foster synthesis. If we drop down to the next category, we see that organizational function again. So it's managerial, and it's not just coordination of communication, but back again to relationships. And relationships need to be handled both internally and externally, as well as providing leadership. And you notice that it's often at a complementary level, not the senior officer, but complementary to that person. And then it's very important to add too that it includes understanding of how you go about integration, something that Gabriele has signaled very well as important. If we drop down to the third area, and Savina has already brought this up in thinking about her, the role she plays in the affective domain. Kristine speaks also of disposition and wisdom. So there's an emotional intelligence. It's an ability to juggle different styles and work with people, but also aligning individual motivations, and sometimes that means conflict resolution too. And then fluency in a particular problem, but Sabina had spoken particularly about the importance of appreciative inquiry, being able to understand the importance. And then finally, dropping to the fourth slide, the next slide and the final slide. If I think about summarizing what's up, I want to urge you to look at Pips Vesey's wonderful webinar where she has an overview of team competencies. I won't elaborate on those, but you see that management and leadership are part of them, but there's also personal and social competence, as well as communication skills. Very, very prominent. Pardon me, that's my cat in the background. I fed her lunch early so she wouldn't visit us, but here she is. So I'll mute as soon as we're done here. So I also urge looking at not only Kristine's webinar again, but Soissons Curies, because one of the things they do, if you look right there in the middle under challenges, is they talk about how this position can be, if vital for functioning, ad hoc and ephemeral. That is with no permanent budget status, no permanent career status, and not enough data for us really to define a career path. So that's one of the wonderful reasons for formation of our group. And qualifications also differ. Some lean more on, I'm an expert in this particular science, but we also need the process experts. Again, signaling the importance of Gabriele's efforts. And then time. It's Kristine speaks compellingly of this in the webinar, that if you're trying to do these tasks on top of trying to publish your own status, to get tenure, that's a challenge. And then finally, just looking across, we look worldwide at across so many rich webinars on the InterReach site, and that roles evolve, and they've evolved over time. Sometimes they grow, sometimes they modify, and they even decline. I'm for example, left Wayne State University. My position no longer exists. Nobody does that function. And we find that people are often working in a more modular fashion than permanently integrated, assimilated into the curriculum. People are also engaged in ad hoc communications more than a steady state of them. And there is a very prominent learning function that's being performed here too, as well as finally to end. We felt, as Sabina was very strong on this point when we organized the group in Gothenburg, on how it's not just about having one leader who assumes all responsibility for being an expert, but everybody needs some level of expertise if they're going to cooperate together. So that's it. And my cat and I will leave you audibly.
Thanks, Julie. Now, Tobias, it's your turn to introduce to the Global Alliance.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sabine. And also thank you very much to InterReach for hosting all of us here. It's so great to see coming together these different strands of inter and transdisciplinarity people and team science people, because that's exactly something the Global Alliance for Inter and Transdisciplinarity is aiming for. So the purpose of the Global Alliance for Inter and Transdisciplinarity is to strengthen and promote the global capacity and also the caliber of collaborative modes of research and practice. So if Kristine started about talking being the arrow, so the Global Alliance for Inter and Transdisciplinarity could be seen as being the umbrella, but facilitating different arrows between diverse distributed groups of institutions and individuals, and doing this by cutting across disciplinary, institutional and sectorial boundaries. And this with the goal to address complex problems that are of interest to the members and to help to solve, mitigate or prevent societal challenges. So this is the overarching goal of the ITD Alliance. The ITD Alliance is a membership organization, both for institutional and individual members. So next slide, please. Its organizational structure is now building up. We have a leadership board with at the moment 9 elected members. I'm the executive secretary of the Alliance, and a very important part of the Alliance are the working groups, and they're really the pillars and the action hubs of the Alliance. There are different working groups that are forming currently and are already active or preparing. It's one on capacity building for collaborative modes of research. It's one on inter and transdisciplinary early career researchers and research and career trajectories. It's one on transdisciplinary or integration methods and toolkits. And it's the one we are now at. It's on the being the arrows people. And all this is embedded into the institutional and individual members. Next slide, please. So the ITD Alliance is currently forming, and we are currently in the process and the formalities to become members. So at the moment, you can go at the website and fill in that you're interested. And then we will get back, hopefully quite soon, with the process how you or your institution can become a member of the ITD Alliance. Also, the leadership board and, as said before, a growing number of the working groups are already active. And every member joining the ITD Alliance until 2021 is considered as a founding member. Also, additional members can be elected to the leadership board. There we are focusing to enhance the diversity of the board. So we are focusing candidates from Asia, Latin America, Africa, and Australia at the moment. And you see below, the current leadership board is formed by some people you sure know because they are part of the Science of Team Science community: Steve Fiore, Cara Hall. Then we have Michiel Kiestra from the Netherlands. We have Christian Pohl from the TD Lab Switzerland. He is also here with us today. We have Julie Thompson-Klein, who is with us today also. We have Michael O'Rourke, many of you also may know. We have Uli Filzmeier from Germany. Then it's Therese Paulsen from the TDNet, and myself as secretary. We don't yet have a president. This will come later on in the process. So that's where we are. We are open for membership, and very important for today, again, to say the working groups are really the pillars of the Alliance, because they are enabling to really get deep into topics and enable then the Alliance to also address the research policy sphere to promote what is being done within the working groups. So thank you very much.
Super, thanks Tobias for this very nice introduction. And now it's really the idea to think about this working group. And as I said, the idea is to really combine forces in these global forces to broaden the community and to establish a working group on integration experts or on being the arrow. So I'm not a fan of labeling. So we said integration expert, interdisciplinary executive scientist. We will come later to this. So let's just say a working group on being the arrow. And the idea really is to include a variety of different people, bridging across different scientific communities, ensure diversity in terms of age, gender, discipline, communities, countries. So the idea is to be, as also Kristine already said, to be as inclusive as possible so that we can build our own home for those who assume this function as being the arrow. So I have some very first ideas that I would like to share about key objectives. So one idea is especially to enable peer-to-peer exchange among integration experts or those who are the arrows in inter and transdisciplinary collaborative research, and to establish a new global community of practice among those integration experts with the aim really to increase networking among each other, but also lobbying for this new profession vis-a-vis research institutes, funding agencies, universities, etc. Another aim would be really to develop and promote the new profession and to establish also or institutionalize training offers for those who would like to be the arrow or would like to be more professional on being the arrow and the connector, etc. So one last thing I think is very important is one objective to recognize and reward this new profession. As I said at the beginning, for me, being an integration expert and assuming this integrative task is a demanding cognitive, social, and emotional task. And it's not just being a facilitator. It really is bringing together different contributions, perspectives, and ideas, including one's own ideas. So one has a really intellectual contribution, and it's not a service role. It's rather a critical science role that we assume here. So I would like that this role, that is a demanding and challenging role, is recognized and rewarded in the current academic system, or maybe in the future academic system. So there are some tasks or activities that we could relate to these objectives. One is we could start as researchers, we are all somehow researchers as well, start writing a joint position paper, maybe within the current special issue organized on expertise in integration and implementation science, led by Gabriele and Michael O'Rourke. And we could also more deep into exploring delve into exploring the nature of inter and transdisciplinary integration. So what does it mean exactly? What does different people think about integration? What different dimension does it have? We could also think about discussing the use of different terms. So we said already integration expert, interdisciplinary executive scientist, integration and implementation scientist. There are a lot of terms floating around in the different scientific communities. So I think it would be nice to discuss the different terms used in these different communities, identify also strengths and weaknesses of the different terms. And eventually, if this is possible, come up with a term agreed upon within this community of practice or this working group. Then I think it would be nice to develop ideal types of integration expert profiles and also ideal types of institutional settings that would be nice to have, and also explore inter and transdisciplinary career paths. So thinking more in compiling experiences, both positive and negative, of people who are assuming this role and who are involved in different scientific communities, describe different path to become an integration expert, and also develop eventually a related massive open online course on integration expert and expertise. And then last, one idea that I also have, or we also have, is organize a series of lobbying workshops and presentations tailored to different target audiences like funding agencies, universities, research institutes, etc., to lobby for this new profession, but also to lobby for funding to further research on this new profession of integration expert and expertise. So these, as I said at the beginning, these are some very rough ideas that I listed here, and now the floor is yours to bring in your ideas on what could be key objectives or core activities of such a global effort or global working group on integration experts. And I would suggest you either raise your hand and I will have a brief look who is shaking the hand or waving the hand, or you just unmute and tell your name and then bring in your idea in this discussion. So, who is the most courageous, like you say in English, the one who wants to break the ice and bring in his or her idea? So I see no one raising hands.
Sabina, this is Kristine Glauber. I just wanted to let everyone know that I put a link to a Google Doc in the chat, and I'm going to be taking some notes, but I just want to invite everyone to feel free to add as you see fit.
Perfect. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So, who would like to break the ice? And Kristine, Hendren, and then Pips.
I'll be super brief. Thank you so much, Savina. I just wanted, when you're saying these core activities, all these really nice concrete things we could do together, I wanted to say that I have just honestly been sitting on a treasure trove of things from the past, early years of becoming InterReach. We had workshops at every sites meeting. Mm-hmm. And every year we left the sites meeting absolutely sure we were going to publish a paper from the greatness of everything that happened. And spoiler, we did not. And so I have all these really great notes that I feel like is the intellectual property of this community. Mm-hmm. And would be happy, maybe we can find a way to just share those. And, of course, checking with folks like Chris Lund, Gabriele Bammer, and Holly Falk-Krasinski, who were instrumental in creating those as well. But I think that everybody would say, hey, let's use it. Let's use that as a knowledge commons. And if we can draw upon that to publish some things or build on them, I'm happy to find a place to put them and have us all own them.
That would be great. And I would be glad to give a look at them to see what role they might play in the article that Sabina has been proposing.
Yeah, exactly what I am currently doing. So we had this ITD workshop on, is there a new profession of integration experts on the rise at the ITD conference at Göteborg. And there we promised that we will publish a joint article with the people who participated and who are interested in this kind of paper. And I just started to write the first abstract. And so maybe we could either think about joining papers, so making joining other co-authors in this paper that I'm planning, or doing a second one that you propose based on the richness of the empirical material that you gathered within the site's workshops. We can discuss this, but I'm open to.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because you had something originally more global in mind, and then this could actually mine the data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just move forward to Pips.
Thanks, Sabine. Just a comment about the really nice presentations today, this morning. Thank you for that. And this I guess just a call out to this whole group as being so collaborative and supportive and optimistic about this work. I have loved working with many people on the call here. And I just want to be kind of just generally supportive of the ideas that are put out there, but also the connection between insights and ITD and how we might be able to kind of move forward on something jointly, because we hear about the possibility of doing that. And I just kind of want to lend support for that. And I think also, as people who are involved in this kind of work, I feel very torn in many different directions, because we kind of because we're connectors and arrows and instigators and facilitators and then you know, leaders of knowledge development in our own rights. I feel so torn in many directions, and I feel like I keep coming back to this group as kind of a home base. And so this is really something that I would like to continue to put time into and kind of focus on. And also just the leadership that we have on this group is amazing. And I'm happy to get behind that and help in any way that I can. So just kind of general support, but very appreciative of all the amazing voices on this call today.
Well, also in your dissertation research, which was reflected in your webinar, is just a really great overview. So I hope that could come into play.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Pips. So who would like to share more ideas on the integration expert working group within the ITD Alliance? Stephanie Vasco.
Hi, I was wondering if we had anyone from outside of academia that could speak to the institutional settings and career paths options that might be available post-academia. I think there are probably a few of us in this group who are looking to transition out of academia and are curious what that might look like. So I was wondering, do those roles exist? Do we have anyone we can bring in to do a webinar on that? Something to that effect.
I guess I could a great idea. Yeah, we've got
Julie, you're unmuted.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I clicked on it. Do we have more people who are involved in federal agencies, but those aren't the only roles. So this would be extremely valuable, Stephanie, because it also speaks to that question. We don't have enough data on career paths.
Well, I could speak to that a little bit. I'm formally trained as a geographer, and when I worked in the university, it was as a kind of a senior staff person, and mostly working on, you know, interdisciplinary and projects spanning colleges and institutes. And since retiring, I've just done the same thing as a consultant. And actually, at Nordup, I've been asked to speak about the consultant's role. I think as a career path, it's very fulfilling and it's very good. But you know, the other thing is I study the university as an industrial system, and what I see is that this function at one time was very much the purview of consultants, and that it's been internalized into the university system, so that consultants typically now just work on handling capacity subcontracting, where the number of initiatives is so large that the university staff can't handle it. And so there are certainly career opportunities, but it's very much a matter of building a network and proving yourself and showing that you have the skills and that you have a successful track record. And, you know, maybe I could talk about that as part of what you're trying to do here.
I can probably jump in, Sabine. My name is Erin Urquhart. A few of you know me on the line. I'm at NASA Goddard outside of DC. But yeah, so along with my my colleague Joel Scott, who's also on the call, we both have previous formal training in science, whether that be earth science, geography, whatnot. And I know for both of us who have recently transitioned away from the science and research role into more kind of coordination and participation, user experience coordinators at NASA, it's been pretty challenging because there hasn't really been a formal career path for people like us that are kind of jumping ship from science and research. And it has been really challenging kind of wearing this new hat in a sea of all of our peers that are scientists and have known us as scientists. And so I think that this group has been really, really helpful for me now in a new role, as well as when I was a federal postdoc at the EPA, to kind of start to explore new career paths. But there isn't a lot of kind of advice and experience outside of, yeah, just like was said, your network, or, you know, having to kind of meld yourself into a role that may not exactly fit exactly what we're all talking about here, because a lot of people outside of this community don't know these terms. But yeah, any sort of guidance, and I can speak for myself and probably, like I said, my colleague Joel, to helping kind of this career path, whether that be in the federal government or private consultant. Yeah, I would love to be involved.
Super, perfect.
I'm going to take my hand down now because I realize it's been up for like the entire time. So I'm going to do that. But I'm also going to take the moment, since my hand was still raised, to kind of second that. I feel like that there are probably many of us, myself included, who are doing some consulting around team science. And that would be a really interesting conversation to just kind of see what all of the different flavors are right now. So I feel like this kind of conversation has come up quite a bit recently. And I feel like I'm kind of stumbling along on my own, but I think there's probably lots of people doing some kind of consulting or engagement in kind of a different setting than academia. So I think that would be a really fascinating conversation for the future.
Okay, thanks. Someone else who...
Yeah, Bethany Larson, who pops into AIS and who pops into Insights, would be a great, this is exactly what she's doing.
Bethany, you would like to add something to it? I saw you are here.
Yeah, to speak to the consulting thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'll just uplift also Ann Heberger-Marino, who has extensive expertise basically being an internal consultant and has recently hung her own shingle. Congratulations, Ann. Yeah, so actually out of the recent CITES conference, sparked by one of our newer CITES members, Hannah Love. Hannah is running actually a community of practice for consulting facilitators of team science, right? So as a consultant, you can do and offer lots of different services, facilitation being one of them. And we could also come up with lists of other services based on the notes that we've harvested from previous interreach work, from Pipps's dissertation and others. What I particularly find in my consultancy that I find difficult is, yes, transitioning to consulting is a pretty easy step from academia, especially if you're consulting for academics. But what I'm finding tricky is that I have a hard time describing myself and my role because I can do so many different things. And even if I try to lump all of those things under a label like integration and implementation specialist, others, my clients, don't know what that is. And so it actually doesn't help. I usually just have to list all of the different things that I do. So I foresee that will be one issue in establishing a pathway to these kinds of roles, especially in consulting, is communicating exactly what this person does without seeming too disjointed, because there are a lot of different things that an arrow person can do. But I personally find that to just be an immediate need that I have. You know, I can't get clients if I can't explain to them in a coherent way they understand what I do.
Thanks. Would anyone like to add something to what Bethany said?
Well, I think I completely agree with Bethany, and I struggle with the same thing. And I think one of the things that I would like to spend some time on is helping to visualize some of the things that we do, either in helping people develop a shared understanding of what we're doing, or helping teams have a shared understanding of what they're doing. I see that as so important and so critical in advancing ideas, is that those visuals of what's actually happening. So we develop that shared understanding and similar mental models. And so that's like, I think another thread that I see is just so critically important. And there are people doing that around the country, but some like a team science flavor of that, I think would be really interesting.
Yeah, we discovered within the program that I'm leading, we discovered also, or I can fully agree with you, that visualization is key, really, to also to enhance communication between different disciplines, etc. So it's a crucial thing that I personally would like to explore more as well. So this would be very nice to think about within this group as well. Are there other comments or other ideas about objectives or activities that such kind of working group on integration expert, or the one and only who's the arrow, that you would like to share?
This is Jan Eagan from Mayo Clinic, and I know one of the things that I'm in a non-traditional position. I'm not, although we are academic, I am not in a traditional role. And I love what you're proposing here, because this is something we have really struggled with. And last year, I actually did a quality project to try and begin to address this and bring this to leadership's attention. So being able to have this sort of a resource, it sounds wonderful.
Thanks. Are there other comments?
Hi, this is, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, perfect.
It's a bit difficult only online. I would also just like to really express my appreciation and gratitude for having stumbled over this context. I have a wildly weird background myself, I suppose, spanning computer science, cultural anthropology, psychology, systems approaches, intervention design, and now social networks. And I have always felt like there has to be something where you can find kind of really apply all of these different perspectives, but never really knew how to express that, or felt there's a lack of any formal path. So I think for people like me who feel like they don't really fit one frame but jump between roles, it would be really, really helpful to be shown that these styles or these curricula can exist and are actually needed and very helpful to solve wicked problems and that sort of thing. So whichever way this goes forward, I just wanted to say I'm very excited about that.
Thanks. So I think this is a perfect end, and I would just go to the last slide that we have prepared. So which are the next steps that we would envision. So first is compile a list of interested people who would like to join this global effort of working on integration expert and expertise, and then certainly outline a first draft of the purpose, key objectives, and core activities of such kind of working group, and submit this to the ITD Alliance, and then see what feedback we get. And before we submit it, of course, circulate the draft among interested people, among you, and getting your feedback, integrating your feedback, and then start with first virtual discussions that we could do. So we have some topics that we showed on the slides, but also some other topics that you raised, which are very interesting: visualization, consultation, etc. So I think there's a lot of topics that we could jointly explore. With this, I would like to give back the floor to Kristine, who wanted to say something about the next webinar. Kristine, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Savina, and thank you to everyone that was on the call. We're going to be cleaning up the recording here and sending it over to Gabriele for getting it up on YouTube, and then we will add it to our webinar archives page on interreach.org. So please go ahead and check it out there. The link is still available if anyone would like to add any notes, and I'll just encourage anyone who is interested in continuing to be a part of this this effort to email Sabina. Her email is at the bottom of this this slide right here. And I also just want to say that we've got some really great webinars coming up, actually featuring Bethany Larson, who spoke today a little bit, and some other folks who are going to be talking about tools that these arrows can use. So we're really excited about that. Be on the lookout via the Interreach lister for updates on that as they become available. But lastly, I just want to say that our webinars are the second Tuesday of every month from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern time. Sorry to be so Eastern centric for those that are not part of the Eastern Seaboard of the United States. But so we hope to see everyone on future calls, and thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks to all of our speakers. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Bye. Thank you.